Times this morning says that 2018 budget, electricity tariffs to go down, more jobs to be created. Minority describes budget as wahala. That's the Times. The daily guide says Ejuma budget daisies NDC, 350,000 jobs coming, light bills down. That's the story. The Daily Graphic, power tariffs to go down next year, and Minority describes budget as empty and poorly packaged. The Business Finder says 2018 budget to stimulate growth, macroeconomic indicators on track, and housing 1,000 units for each regional hospital. Almost every paper, I guess, will be talking about the budget this morning. My guest to do the talking, Member of Parliament for Yefutu constituency, a member of the NPP, Honorable Alexander Afenyomakin, is here. Good morning.
Right, good morning, sir.
And I hope you're doing great.
By His grace.
A day after budget.
Yeah.
Grateful for your time with us. And also have here a member of the NDC, former Deputy Minister John Jenapo. Good morning, too.
Good morning.
I hope you're great.
I'm good.
Let's start with the Ghanaian Times this morning. Now, the story is captured on page 16. Government has proposed to reduce electricity tariffs next year to both industrial and domestic consumers. Now, to this end, government has reviewed the tariff setting methodology and cost structure of power and forwarded to the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission for consideration. Mr. Foriata, the finance minister, who announced this in Parliament yesterday, when delivering the budget statement, said the move formed part of the industrialization agenda of a government. So the budget dubbed a Jumapa, literally meaning work budget, is on the theme, putting Ghana back to work. He explained that the reduction in tariffs would cushion industry and relieve them of huge monies expended on electricity for production activities. So that's a story. 13% for residential, as much as 21%. So 13% for tariff, the low voltage, medium voltage, high voltage, and high voltage mines would enjoy 13, 11, 14, and 21%. That's the story so far. And that's the first thing we'll take a look at this morning on the budget. Alex, let me begin with you. We had hints of this reduction. So it has come, but we're told that it has to go to PURC. Are you able to perhaps talk about why it had to go to PURC first before its implementation starts?
Well, Bright, once again, let me say good morning, and a good morning to the viewers out there. Well, as you may be well aware, it's become part of our constitutional custom that a budget is presented, setting out government economic and social policy for the year, the fiscal year, I mean, and that is able to guide government on all its transactions. It also helps industry to decide. You know that government is a major stakeholder when it comes to employment, job creation, and building the basic infrastructure and all that. Once government takes the initiative, the private sector is able to follow up and then continues with the necessary implementation. So it is necessary, and I'm sure that is why the budget, the constitution requires that the budget must be read to ensure certainty, and we've been able to come out with an enactment that says that at least same be done in November, so that there is that preparation. Parliament would have to debate it, and then by 1st of January, the budget will kick in. I'm sure you're equally aware that one of the concerns raised by many Ghanaians is this high tariff on electricity. Households and industry have complained. In fact, it was a major campaign issue. And our friends in the NDC have had the occasion to question our sincerity on the issue of reducing electricity tariff. But we asked them to wait a moment, be patient. We are putting in place the necessary support systems in place. We have. We are in office barely 10 months, this is our program, our first major program. And I want to emphasize this. The first major financial program of this government is what is going to take effect 2018. We were sworn in January 7th. There was a budget on account, which was from January to March, which was not our budget. Our budget really kicked in from April, which was read and all that. And you can understand that any new government that comes into office, particularly so when you have a president who is a lawyer and would want to comply with legal regime, any program that the government will want to follow needs a legislative backing. So for instance, you have the Northern Development Authority Bill, the Middle Belt, the Coastal Belt, and all that. All these in the Zongo and Inner City Development Bill that came through and all that. The one district, one factory thing. All these things, the essence of it is create the legislative framework. You cannot just spend public funds anyway. And the first 10 months have been such that the government needed to identify loopholes in the economy. For instance, at our ports, the paperless system that was introduced, critically, government was losing so much money there. We needed to streamline that area. That has been done. A major decision to bring relief to parents, free SHS. Many pessimists had thought that we could not do it. Yet this government was bold to do that. So, Bright, in effect, within 10 months, these fundamentals have been put in place. Now is a period of takeoff. And one critical thing I am happy about is the support for entrepreneurs. That young men and women, be they NDC, be they MPP, be they CPP, there is an opportunity for them to the extent that they are willing to start their own businesses.
We'll come to talk about that, so we can go on with the university.
Integral to this is the fact that you rely on energy. I think somewhere 2016, on one of your programs, I gave an example of Fridays at Sakumono, where the owner had told me that because of high utility costs, he had to lay off some workers. He was unable to operate and all that. The restaurant was having problems and all that because electricity was expensive. In fact, to him at the time, it was cheaper to buy diesel to power his gensets than to rely on electricity. So if government now wants to look at it rather proactively, this is not an inertia-driven government. This is not a government that would wait for complaints before it takes decisions. They say, look, I am committed to it. Give me time. I've not been there for 8 years. I'm in my 10th month. I'm putting in the necessary support systems. Let me start my own. And when I start, I would go ahead and do the necessary intervention. And it is committed to it. It is doing it. Look, we are in a political engagement. We are in a political enterprise. We have opposing views. Even where, sincerely, our friends on the other side think that, look, this is laudable. Instead of them to ask how we arrived at it, they would want to first criticize it, poo-poo the government. They will do it anyway, instead of commending the government. Why? Because in their time, for the 8th year, with all the ambitious efforts, they negotiated poorly. That is how come this whole problem of high electricity tariff came about. Because of poor negotiation. And Mary is a typical example.
So this is doable.
I am saying that, well, if you set your priorities right, if you have the basic managerial skill to be able to identify what to do, what you want, and how you need to support the populace, you'll be able to achieve it. We were told that we could not do free SHS. It's been done. So, reducing electricity tariffs, we had contended that, look, your poor negotiation has gotten us to this level. Now, take steps to address it. We have taken steps. Issuing the energy bonds, what were we doing? To free those who had invested in that sector. To help the banks to get liquid. Now we've done it. Even when we had achieved a success rate, the NDC criticized and said, oh, the energy bond had failed. But don't forget, that one of the reasons, at least I was at a hearing where Bank of Ghana made a presentation, one of the reasons why Bank of Ghana gave for the problem that the two banks had, Capital and UT Bank, was the fact that they had made huge investment in some of these energy-related businesses, and the returns were not coming. I was there.
That was the Bank of Ghana.
I am quoting the governor of the Bank of Ghana. This is one of the reasons why he gave. That it wasn't that they were doing that bad, but some of them had invested heavily in some energy-related businesses and the returns were not coming. I am saying that if today this government has issued bonds to address some of these energy-related debts. Two, this government, pursuant to that, is saying that, look, I want to bring relief to households and industry. It is assuring that, look, we're going to reduce electricity tariffs. What we need to do is to be patient. January is not far away. We are going to go into the nitty-gritties. Now, in terms of procedure, you were asking why go through PURC. Of course, we set PURC there. We set it up as a regulatory body. All the policy initiatives of government must find space at that forum where the fine-tuning would be done. Of course, it cannot be an announcement at the Flagstaff House and straight away it
I
take
wanted
effect.
to know if we could have consulted them before.
No. The issue is not about consulting them before. PURC hasn't said that they were not engaged in any way. In any event, government sets.
So in effect, they have been engaged.
They haven't come out to say that they were not engaged. Therefore, there's no need to even ask the question, why didn't you engage them? The point is that PURC is there as a regulatory body. Government has the broader responsibility to set the policy benchmarks. Once those things are done, it is for PURC to look at the technical bit of it, set it right, make sure that it is in accord with law.
Let me ask this question this way.
Very well.
I am a consumer, so I would have been happier if Mr. Kanufurata had said that we have already consulted PURC, and PURC has agreed that 13% is doable for residential, 21% for industry. So from January 1st, we are taking off.
Oh,
as a consumer.
Right.
I'm asking the question as a consumer.
Right.
Instead of me saying that I'm now going to PRC for them to see if it is doable.
Right. Before the budget is read, all levels of engagement come to play, which you agree.
Yeah.
The man is reading a statement, and he tells you that, look, we have run some numbers, and per what we want to put in place, we are of the view that this is achievable. However, there is a body charged with that responsibility, and that body would have to do the final takeoff, so it will be placed before them. I think that in all sincerity, having made that public commitment, like the commitment made for the implementation of free SHS, like the commitment made for the implementation of restoration of nursing training allowance, which former President Mahama has said he could not do. The restoration of teacher training allowances, which we were told it could not be done. Let's judge this government by its actions.
Okay.
Government could have avoided discussions on electricity tariff. Yes, so I'm letting you know that
managing expectations.
I'm saying that the government could have avoided it entirely. However, if the government has come out to commit itself, then like before, you see, you judge somebody by his previous conduct. Has this government been sincere for the last 10 months as compared to others who had 8 years?
Your critics say that you have not been sincere because when you promised senior high school, you only did it for the first years.
Very well. What have we said? In our manifesto, we said that we're going to implement free SHS. Now, in rolling out the implementation, as we have said, we say, look, this is what we're doing. Year one, those entering next year. So it tells you that by the 3rd year into our administration, free SHS would have been rolled out completely. Now, ask yourself.
Wrap up for me. Let me get John in.
Very well. Okay. So ask yourself, what what did we see in the last 8 years? If for the 8 years that our friends had the opportunity to rule, they had spent the first 3 years to do this, wouldn't be where we are. If Ameri had been passionately negotiated with all the competence around it, we wouldn't have Ameri signing a deal, assigning that deal to its own subsidiary also assigning to a third party, and a 150 million being cooled off quietly.
When is this case going to court?
Oh, right. You need not ask issues of when is this case going to court. A matter is being discussed.
Okay.
A matter is being raised. As to it going to court for the purpose of civil action or criminal action, it's a matter of time.
Okay, all right. That's why I was asking that when is it going to court?
It's a matter of time. I mean, okay, whether or not this is a matter where a member of parliament has raised an issue of misrepresentation. Right. There is a parliamentary committee looking into this. Parties have been invited to testify. Fortunately, and I respect Honorable Kwabena Donko, besides all the gallery politics that politicians would want to engage in, he submitted himself humbly to the authority of the committee and testified. There are records to suggest that yes, assigning the deal from Ameri, the parent company, to his subsidiary, yes, government was on notice.
It's false.
That's why
I thought you would listen to me and then don't make your notes. I thought you would listen to me and make your notes.
Alex, I asked a simple.
Can I finish?
I thought that question I asked would put an end to this conversation because.
No, let me finish.
As long
let me make my false representation for him to rebut. Don't worry. I am speaking to what I've seen. I'm saying that Ameri, the parent company that signed a contract with government of Ghana, assigned its rights and responsibilities to its own wholly owned subsidiary on notice.
It's false.
Okay.
When its wholly owned subsidiary assigned its responsibility to a third party to perform an obligation under the contract, that was not on notice.
So that
was bad faith. I have cited documents. He should not mislead us.
What you are alleging is fraud.
I am alleging misrepresentation. There's a difference between misrepresentation and fraud.
Is it not something the court can deal with?
Right.
Misrepresentation.
Right. With the greatest respect. You want to get to a point. All I'm saying is that there's a parliamentary committee.
Exactly the point.
At this stage, we can only consider discussions on facts that are available.
All right.
As to whether somebody else would want to contest it, I will speak to facts I have seen.
Alexander Afenyo-Mark, and I'm grateful. Member of Parliament for the Futu constituency. John, please come in. So, managing the expectations of Ghanaians, from today we know 13% tariffs for residential users, industries in general. Industry is looking at 21%. The concern is that, okay, so how do we manage it in case PRC says that these figures are not doable?
Thank you, and good morning to your viewers. First of all, let me just quickly state on record and on authority that when Ameri was assigning its right, they wrote to the ministry. The ministry responded, and we signed the agreements. Dr. Donko signed, and the chief director witnessed. And so viewers kindly ignore what Honorable Afenyo-Mark.
But that's why I said on notice. The language I use, yes, you see, he didn't follow. Right,
Alex, wait, Alex, please.
That's why I'm saying yes. That's exactly what I just said.
Since you said you were speaking to fact, you allow him to also make.
We do this.
Right, he interjected. You kept quiet.
No,
he said that Alex, go to the ministry. It's the same point I made.
Alex, please, you allow John to speak. John, please go on.
So they wrote to the ministry. They informed us. We concurred. We went through the processes. We witnessed, signed, and came to an
meaning you were on notice. That is the legal language.
Alex,
you were on notice.
I may be compelled to switch your microphone.
Oh, you may. But so, if we have the opportunity to correct,
allow him to talk because we want to deal with the letter.
Let's assume that.
So please.
Let's assume that both of us agree that Ameri wrote to us. We signed off and agreed. So what's the issue?
Let's move on.
What are you bringing it here to do? To do what?
Let's move on.
I don't get it.
No, move on. Let's deal with the electricity.
It's important that we remain sincere and transparent. And you are an ordinary consumer. And you asked a legitimate and fundamental question. And I want viewers to take this. Dr. Baumia told us On the, I have all the records here.
Are you here to do personality politics? Deal with issues.
Alex.
But you should deal with issues.
I might not only mute your microphone, I might take it off completely.
On November
Next
13th, he told us that electricity tariffs were expected to go down by 25%. And here, 2008 budget, Baumia hints at 25% power tariffs. Then the president himself says that electricity tariffs to go down and assured us that when the finance minister comes, he'll provide us with the details. So, and you asked a legitimate question, and I'm sure viewers would agree with me. The PURC is an independent body mandated under Act 538 of 1997. And Section 4 of the Act states, and let me quote it, independence of the Commission. Subject to the provisions of this Act, the Commission shall not be subject to the direction or control of any person or authority in the performance of its functions. So, ab initio, it's established that the PURC is independent. You can take proposals to them. They may accept or reject the proposals. The PURC's mandate is to set tariffs. That is not the mandate of this government. Can you people get serious with policy making and stop meddling in the affairs of the PURC? What is this about? Governance is a serious business. And let's take the people of Ghana with all the seriousness we deserve. You can't do this. You can't debase the whole system to this level. I find that very, very unfortunate.
You think government cannot set the tariffs?
They can't. They don't even have the legal mandate. They don't have the legitimacy. They don't have any authority to do so. And that is why the minister was struggling.
The taxes on the
he says that, look,
are they not imposed by government?
No, not that. You can only, the PRC has nothing to do with taxes.
Okay.
Government could have just come to say that, look, we are taking the 17.5% VAT on non-residential. You come to Parliament, we agree or disagree. Government has no business with tariff methodology. How does government get into tariff methodology? That you are going to submit tariff methodology to PURC. And even the minister says that, look, PURC may, and yet you are sending a signal to the business community. You know why we read the budget in November? There's a rationale behind that. It used not to be so. We decided that, look, under the Public Financial Management Act, under PIFMA, latest by 15th November, read the budget. The essence is that industry, businesses, commerce, and all of us would then take your budget, analyze it, and it will help us in formulating our business strategy and plan. That is the essence of budgeting, because you use fiscal and monetary policy to handle your budget. The monetary policy deals with the flow of money, and you do that with interest rates and all that to determine how you put money in the system. Then the fiscal policy deals with taxation and all that. So when I look at government's fiscal policy and it says I'm going to have a 25% reduction in my tariff, and tariff constitutes a lot for some of the industries. If you look at their recurrent expenditure, some spend about 60 to 70% of their recurrent expenditure alone on electricity. So you are sending a signal to them to prepare. So if I were a member of the business community, I'll begin to employ more people. In drawing my budget, I'll slash it by 25%. What if URC says that, look, when we put the system into the model rejected it and we can't do the 25%? You will be dislocating the economy. And that's why you asked him, is it not tidier? Is it not reasonable? Is it not proper that with all this information, you engage PURC, run the model with them, run the figures with them, and then the minister come to tell us that having engaged PURC, we've come to an agreement that from January, this is what will happen, this is what will happen. Does that not make sense? And you are just circumnavigating and rigmaroling and telling us that they should have. Look at, and then this doesn't believe in this. When we passed the ESLA levy, the Energy Sector Levy Act, your current minister promised that on assumption of office, immediately, and that was operational word, it will be scrapped. They described that levy as obnoxious. Our modeling indicated that we're going to do 5 years. We're paying the banks. It's not even true that we're not paying the banks. The minister in the 2017 budget cost 1.3 billion cedi having been paid. And yet you say that we are not paying the banks. That's why the banks are collapsing. You can have your opinion, but you can't have your different sets of facts and expect me to have my different sets of facts. Facts are facts, and facts are sacrosanct.
So the assurance from this government that the tariffs will go down, the fact that some other assurances that this government has given have been fulfilled, does not give the consumer the assurance that the tariff will go down.
What's today's date?
Today is 16th, the day after.
Mark my words. I won't even give them 1st of January. 16th January. Call me into the studio, and I will tell you that your tariff has not gone down by 13%.
But at least, okay.
I'm throwing that challenge to you.
It will go down,
on
but
the
not
16th
13%.
of January. That's what they are telling us. That is what I see. And I don't know why they want to put themselves in a quagmire. I don't know why they try to push themselves into a conundrum. And it was the same thing with the levy. When we can, we'll take it off. We will do this. Eventually, they are stretching the levy from the proposed 5 years to 10 years. You know how much you and I are going to pay every year? Not the principal of 10 billion, not the principal. Interest of 1.9 billion every year. They are going to service the debt for 5 years without paying a penny of the principal. It's only in the 5th year, in the 6th year, and in the 7th year that they are going to retire the principal. The 10-year bond, you and I are going to pay that amount, the interest, not the principal, for 7 good years. And even with that, when you went to the capital market, you couldn't raise 6 billion. And you come and tell us that you were successful.
What could
it's only the MPP
what could government
that tries to
done?
achieve a certain milestone, fails to achieve that, and says that we should clap for them. They've done so well.
What could have done with tariffs? There's a general call for reduction. What could have
There
been
are
done?
2 things, and that's why they must listen.
Particularly when our generation is now more of thermal.
There are 2 things, and that's why they must listen to us. 1, fuel accounts for 80% of the recurrent expenditure for thermal plants. Fortunately, through the effort we've put in place, our indigenous gas is coming on stream consistently and on an incremental basis. Yesterday, when I checked, we were supplying 110 SCAF. The Jubilee fields are working now. The Tayin fields are working. The Sankofa fields are working. The Tayin agreement, when we did it, we put in place a clause to indicate that at the end of the period, we'll do an analysis. And clearly, the minister came to Parliament and confirmed that the gas prices will come down. So as you replace crude oil with gas, it brings about efficiency and it brings about cost reduction. You could have as much as 40% cost reduction. So pass that on. 2 has to do with the taxes. There's a 17.5% VAT component on non-residential uses. If you take even 5% off, it cuts across. You don't go and sit with PRC and doing this so-called voodoo modeling and collapsing of banks. That is what government should be looking at. Because you see, what PRC does is to set tariff that will meet the cost of generation through the value chain. So whether you unbundle, whether you collapse the bundle, whether you shrink the bundle or do whatever, at the end of the day, if the cost of generation through the value chain is $100 million, you must raise $100 million. So when you come to tell us, and I took your paper doing the modeling, based on the figures the minister has put out, it means that we are going to have a revenue shortfall of 14.4% on the average.
Do this 13.21%.
All you do is to add them and strike the average. That will give you the mean. So you add all of them and look at the numbers, total number, and just divide by that number. So on the average, we are looking at a 14.4% reduction in January. What happens to that revenue shortfall? Is government going to shore up? Is government going to subsidize? Is that provided for in the budget? Please, stop dribbling us around and think that everybody will just swallow this hook, line, and sinker.
The president is very trustworthy of his minister, and he said that Mr. Kanuforiata is, he even described the man as a magician because he's able to squeeze money to deal with these things.
Oh,
so
yes,
perhaps,
yes.
There is a way our government is working to shore up this revenue loss, or yes, that you're talking about.
I have no doubt he's a magician, because this is the man who promised us 51 factories and ended up building none. Promised us 1 village, 1 dam last year, ended up building none. Promised 1 million per constituency, ended up giving none. Promised Zongo Development Fund over 200 million, ended up giving none. Told us that every year he will give $50 million. This year he's giving 100 million CD. So we can trust them. because they have the magic to turn around. Told us they were going to do all kinds of electrification projects, and the lowest in the history of this country under the Fourth Republican Constitution. They are doing last year, 0.6% extension. Not 1%, 0 point. And so you can tickle yourself and laugh. You can decide that you want to take us on a run, but reality will catch up with you. And the outturns are showing. Revenues. The same minister came first, the main budget, he gave projections, came back with the mid-year review budget and reviewed it, and yet couldn't meet the revenue targets.
All right.
They failed to meet their revenue targets.
I'm grateful.
And you tell him he's a magician.
Let's turn attention to jobs. Alex, the Ghanaian Times has another story that says the government is to introduce a major job initiative that will reduce graduate unemployment next year. It is dubbed the Nation Builders Corps, and 100,000 graduates will be trained, equipped with the required work and tools deployed around the country. There will be extension officers, teachers, sanitation inspectors, nurses, healthcare workers, and tax collectors. 600 million cedis has been allocated for the initiative. And this is expected to be an initiative that will focus on creating jobs in the health, education, agriculture, sanitation, and drive revenue mobilization and collection. The budget is christened a Jumapa budget, and it's one issue a lot of expectations from people are being looked at. How will this support the effort at reducing unemployment?
Right. The ordinary man on the streets of Accra believes in the MPP. If you ask any person between NDC and MPP, which of these two parties can better manage the economy, whoever you ask will not hesitate in letting you know that it's NPP. It's a matter of fact. Two, when I hear our friends in the NDC speak, I don't expect them to be praise singing. I don't expect them to be applauding us. I expect some criticism though, but I expect them to be measured in their criticism. For a simple reason, that they ruled for 8 years. They were in office for 8 years. Now, if a new government, for some of these attacks, if say we are in our 3rd year and these attacks are coming, hallelujah, I mean, you can go ahead. Then there's a real banter. You say, oh, you've been there for 3 years, you are in your 4th year, what have we seen? But if you, right from the outset, immediately the man was sworn in fact, before, you now say that, go ahead and implement your free SHS and let's see. The man does it. You still don't want to see anything good in him? So, to me, again, it is the NDC's old strategy of remaining in the gallery and would not want to at least deal with issues. But I will not follow their path. Your simple question is, these electricity tariffs that have gone, that went up, Ghanaians questioned the government's decision to allow it to go that far. And their simple answer then was that we are now engaging the private sector, it's expensive. We kept telling them that, look, your negotiations are poor. You rush, you don't take your time to negotiate well. That is why you are bringing this burden on Ghanaians, but they will not listen. And this morning, I have given you the merry example. I have given you the merry example. $150 million converted times 4. My mathematics is bad. 150 times 4. You are talking about some 600 million plus. I am saying that this money,
okay. No, you allow him. Alex, let's move on.
I'm assuming the dollar today. I'm assuming 1 to 4.
You go on.
I thought you were. I thought you rebuke him.
Yes, this is the first one. It's a yellow card.
No, this is second time. This is third time, and I thought you rebuke him.
Alex, please go.
Some referees we have.
I'm the referee in
Some referees we have.
All right, you go on.
Some referees we have. You see, you have succeeded in getting.
No, Alex, please.
I'm used to this.
Alex,
some referees we have.
Alex, there's a caution.
What is a
yellow
caution?
card for a red card? So there's a caution. Please go on. John is in caution. Alex, go on.
Is it when you're struggling? You want to fight?
I'm not struggling.
I don't want to bring my yellow card. Alex, please go on. This is just a caution.
No, you've given him a yellow card already.
No, it's a caution. Go on.
So you won't put him off.
Alex, it's a caution. Please.
Very well.
No, we don't have time.
You see, all the negotiations in power purchase agreements were so poorly done that resulted in the cost of electricity going up. It's a matter of fact.
Okay.
They can't dispute that. To the extent that we had to even question them why they didn't want to bring car power to Parliament. Okay. And they never brought it to Parliament.
So the point here
so the point here is the economic situation we find ourselves is not one that was just unleashed on us by this government. It was unleashed on us by the NDC's 8-year rule. It's a matter of fact. They know. So if somebody is promising a reduction, already don't forget, in the 2017 budget, some taxes were removed on electricity tariffs. Some taxes were removed. The NDC's argument was that these were not significant.
So, Alex,
that was their argument.
Alex, the tariffs are doable. That's all you want to say.
Oh, obviously, if in a financial statement, if in a financial statement, a minister has come out boldly to say it. Okay. What else do you expect?
Then I ask you about the job.
Yes, yes. The national entrepreneurship
the 100,000 jobs for next year. That's what.
I am even
more of them.
I would want to even focus on the private sector. Right. You see, I'm a businessman. I'm an entrepreneur, and I know that if I'm able to successfully implement an initiative where I provide service, I'm able to employ. At least for the past 9-10 months, I've been able to revive my logistics business. At least I've been able to employ some of my constituents. At least I've been able to employ some drivers, some technicians, some mechanics. They are working for me. I believe that if many others are able to start their own businesses, they will be able to employ more. Because the pressure on us, put aside NDC MPP, the pressure on him to give jobs. I'm sure people go to him with CVs. Even you sitting here, by virtue of the fact that you come on TV, I'm sure people come to you with CVs. I want jobs, don't they? Don't they? You have to respond.
They do.
Yes, exactly. So if there is any policy initiative that is aimed at helping the private sector to create jobs, the better it is. One example. And this one, I expect those in the printing industry to take advantage. You know, recently, 47 drugs, the government through an executive instrument placed a restriction on 47 drugs. So what does that mean? No more importation of these drugs. They should be manufactured right here because our local pharmaceuticals have capacity. But the problem here is that these pharmaceutical companies, whilst they are enjoying tax rebates and are enjoying this restriction, the value chain is having a problem because they are still importing labels from India and China. They are still importing materials for the purpose of packaging. So, for instance, in that side, in that sector, the pharmaceutical field, the government has opened up, and in fact, let me add that the initiative had been taken by the NDC government. First, some restrictions were placed, so that in itself was an advantage. Some taxes were removed on raw materials that were imported, so that in itself was good. And the current administration added 47 more. I expect, for instance, that the printing industry will take advantage so that we complete the value chain, because over the last time I checked, over 50 million worth of labels and other packaging materials are imported every year from India and China by these pharmaceuticals. So that is one example for that sector.
Okay,
so
that one example is okay for now. Let me get Johnny for us to take some comments. We'll come back and then we'll deal with the other.
Have you been receiving CVs? Huh?
Yeah, I have a lot of them.
Interesting comments there. Loads and loads of them. Of course, the budget is very crucial. It says, good morning, Bright. Can you ask the MPP man, does he really know how to calculate the electricity cost? If then, he must keep quiet because the 13% reduction will never help. Even the amount they're saying they will use to build new industries are low to start. Please, Ghanaians are here waiting for 2020 to come so that they can kick you out of office. Ekwamo Abuatim from Nkenkasu, Offense North. TV3, good morning. Why is the opposition quick to justify that the 2018 budget, let's always see its fruition in 2018, but on the percentage-wise of the 2017, I think the government succeeded some 75%. Let's all, as Ghanaians, work close to the 2018 budget and keep it, well, I can't get it, but Kaswa, thank you very much. Alasan Wana says, good morning to you and your cherished panelists. This budget read in Parliament yesterday was an excellent one ever read in the history of Ghana's independence. This is because it touches on all the key sectors of the economy, most especially the energy sector, agri sector, roads, educational sector, job creation, which are the ingredients for development. Long live Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo's MPP. Mr. Afenyo Makin, don't you feel ashamed of yourself when you talk about that free SHS policy? If you have a son or daughter being a beneficiary of that policy and he or she is going through what the students are going through, what have you, would you have sat on public TV to speak the way you're speaking? Please, Johnny, send your reporters to Boku. The MC is diverting projects that were awarded based on community needs assessment by donors. Her backyard, that is threatening the peace we are currently enjoying because tensions are mounting and any amount from any moment from now, Boku could be in another. Okay, we don't wish that for you, but we'll check up on that. So far, so very good. Nana and his government are delivering their promises. May God guide and protect them to deliver all by Adina Dabara from Wa. Ejadam Inyan Miam says, I don't know why the NDC gets diarrhea and consternation about the coming of the special prosecutor. If you have done no wrong or committed any crime, why fear the special prosecutor? You see why the partridge gets headache when one is cooking a guinea fowl? We must seriously implement this SP to prove to politicians and all Ghanaians that you can steal, but the law will not spare you. No compromises and discrimination, irrespective of whatever political party you belong to. Jane from La says the budget is very modest. A visionary leader indeed. Alasan from Tabale says, Johnny, we really have to stop getting ahead of ourselves. Once the budget statement is read, it becomes effective in the minds of the ordinary people. In any case, what didn't we hear from the 2017 budget? How many of those promises came to light? And now 2018 budget, waiting for the hand of God. Today, importers of spare parts have been slapped again with the maintenance and extension of the special import levy up until 2019. After 2019, this is 419. Honorable Afenyo is only shouting and making non-fast statement. Did MBB consult assemblies before taking off headquarters levy? Why is it with the electricity cut? Kojo account in Cape Coast South. And Bonti Benjamin Achebe Boko says the solution to Dumso has never been generation capacity. In fact, we have had enough capacity over the years as a nation. The truth is that Dumso was only a financial problem, as Dr. Bawumia stated some time ago. And we thank God that the able Akufo-Addo government has dealt with the challenge. God is working. Coco says, don't read anymore. But this one says, good morning, TV3. And Nanado and his team are doing a great job. This budget will help Ghanaians well. God bless Nanado and his team. Hadi in Takrady. Coco, spare me this one, please. Spare me, I beg you. It says, in fact, what happened yesterday among the two so-called honorables is a disgrace to our dear country. When someone expresses his or her mind about parliament or parliamentarians, he or she is summoned to appear before parliament disciplinary committee for contempt. What these two honorables did, they should bow their heads in shame, and they owe us an apology to Mother Ghana, Parliament and their constituencies as well. Asante and Accra sent that one. I'm happy that the two gentlemen themselves are parliamentarians. Maybe they want to take a bite on that. Between Dr. Akutuose and...
On the floor?
No. outside Parliament. But the two of them were
Okay.
on live TV. Fifi Kweti and Honorable Akutuose.
And what did it?
They nearly.
Go and watch the video.
All right. John, please come in.
Yeah, let me just come in quickly. First of all, it's wrong for Dr. Bamia to claim that Dumsa was a financial problem. It's wrong. He should read the 2017 budget. The minister admits that we added 880 megawatts. That contributed to stabilizing the power situation. If you don't have the generation capacities, you can't even talk about fueling them. That is why this year the minister also agrees that another 450 megawatts has been added through the signing of the car power agreement. And so those who claim that it was only a financial problem, I think they should review their notes. When it comes to the finance, this year alone, an honorable opinion, I'm stating this, Ghana Gas has supplied gas worth about $300 million. That's about 1.something billion. They haven't been paid 1 peso. From my analysis, we should expect fresh debt, not legacy debt, not existing debt, of between 1.5 to 2 billion cedis. And so whilst we pass a levy that you promised to scrap the failed to scrap, you are piling more and fresh debt. And that is a major problem. But jobs, you know, one way of creating jobs is to expand your economy. And not just expanding the economy, but expanding the economy at certain critical areas. For instance, if you look at this year's growth rate, it's projected at 7.9. So you might think that is very, very good. And then you take it. But you must then go into it, dissect it, and determine what is happening in order to formulate policy. The key area for me is the non-oil sector, because oil can have a boost and a bust. So anytime we adopted a scenario or a strategy or a methodology where anytime we give the growth figures, after giving the overall figure, we dissect it into two. And say, this is our non-oil sector, this is our oil sector, so that we can mark our progress. Last year, 2016, our non-oil sector growth rate was 5%. This year, the minister concedes that it's 4%.
That's a non-oil.
Non-oil, 4%. So our growth in terms of you and I, the Makola woman, the farmer, industry and all that, is dipping in terms of the growth rate. Despite all the issues they are talking about. The only thing that has lifted the growth rate is oil. This government is so lucky. In the history of this country, they have had the highest number of barrels in terms of volumes compared to any other government. In fact, the minister concedes the oil volumes have gone up.
But oil revenue started coming in your own administration, so don't say compared to other governments.
We're wrapping up. So,
cannot be that other government.
If you help him to finish, then I can quickly come so that
there are some factual inaccuracies that it's our collective responsibility.
If you note down,
but you said we are about closing.
Yes, but once he makes those facts, I'll give you the chance to.
Is that your promise?
Yes.
Very well.
So, John, please go.
Okay,
we're dealing with facts.
Very well. But you said any other all other governments. Which other governments?
There's been the Mills government.
Which one?
There's been the Mahama government.
Oh, which Mills?
And there's Akufo.
We've had Mills, Mahama
and you've just
government,
talked about
NDC
Kufuor government. And I'm saying that your volumes and the
Kufuor
minister
discovered the oil.
Alex, he's almost wrapping up. So that I'll come to you.
It was NDC government.
It's a strategy. Anytime he realizes that things are not going well for him, he decides to act.
I will not do that.
John, please.
So what I'm saying is that this government has had about 100% in terms of volumes increment, because the 10 fields are on. And then even in terms of pricing, they've had an increment of 110%. Our total revenue last year was $247 million. This year they are making over $500 million. And so they are so lucky. They've gotten so much revenue, but achieved very little. In fact, the fishing sector is contracted from the monetary policy.
Think it would affect the job creation?
If your fishing sector is not growing, what are you doing? The most important thing, and that for me is very critical, is the service sector. Because it's the service sector that creates the jobs now. The service sector today accounts for 62% of the share of our GDP. The service sector under our regime.
In 10 months.
Okay.
No, do we have figures for 10 months?
Now you're talking of 10 months.
I thought I was coming to give you the chance
you
to
close the
react.
financial year and then you run numbers.
He
You
doesn't
are talking
understand-
of which
he doesn't
figures
understand economics.
I wouldn't
The
understand.
minister has made projections.
No.
What you do in economics is that
all right.
you take the figures of
Okay,
September, and then based on the September figures,
What is this?
you do the
No, what
modeling
is this?
and
All
give
right.
the
And what is
Okay,
this?
all right.
What happened?
Okay.
You want to behave
All
like-
right.
you want to
Gentlemen,
behave like you are on the floor.
I am grateful.
You see, these people are who expose them big time.
Well, don't worry, you can expose us after 8 years.
John, but
Expose us after 8
John,
years.
Why?
No, expose us
John,
after
but
8
that is
years.
your
We will
contribution
compare.
to nation
After 8
building.
years.
It's not
If you want to
something
compare,
that
wait,
you
8
do
years
for your
after
own
8
What they are
advantage.
good at is talk.
All right.
Talk.
No problem.
I am
Subject
grateful.
them to scrutiny, then they will begin to shiver.
I'm grateful.
I'm giving you figures.
Alexander Afenyo-Markin is a member of parliament for the Afutu constituency. He's a member of the NPP. John Jinapur is a member of the
But not being a
NDC,
member
a
of
former
NPP is not
member of Minister of God, Deputy Minister, and a member of the NDC.
Say that I have always been a member of NPP.
All right, but let's go.